little while ago, I made a video about the fictional language of Meandgar, a conlang that I created, and I got a lot of comments on that video asking for more, especially about this world of Dycratus in which Meandgar exists. So, you got me. If I really have to talk about my 15-year project in depth to a bunch of willing individuals who are as nerdy as I am, then I suppose I'll oblige. I started work on Dycratus sometime around the age of like 5 or something. I did some digging a while back and looked at old maps of this world, and it seems it grew out of a previous fantasy world of my young brain, Worldbuilding. This was a direct parallel world to ours, which exists, under the floor. Thus, it's a bit difficult to know exactly when this ended and Dycratus began, but you can still see the lasting impact of Worldbuilding in that the map of Dycratus looks kind of like a messed up version of a map of the Earth. I will say, as far as this project is concerned, I care about as much about the rules of geography and geology and plate tectonics as I care about having a theoretically viable biology of dragon mitochondria. This world is governed by the actions of powerful deities and magical beings and the flows of magic to and from 8 great crystals. It has a history many hundreds of millions of years long, and is complete with its own geological ages, if you want to call them that, but they don't work like in our world. I'm not even sure Dycratus is on a globe. Like, it certainly has curvature and is probably one face of a really big planet separated off from the rest of the planet by the edges of the world where the laws of time and space start to break down. It's quite possibly surrounded by a series of interdimensional portals or something. But other scholars in world have speculated that the world is a flat ocean which stretches out in all directions forever, and Dycratus happens to be a bit of a curved bump on this otherwise flat surface. Things work the way I want them to work because it's good for a particular story, or it's thematically interesting, or whatever. And one final disclaimer: this is not a finished project. Very little is known about the beginning of the world, but sometime when Dycratus looked like this, the first intelligent life appeared. 3 great spirits, all nameless, with an infinite number of different forms which they take on simultaneously. The first is a strange spirit, later known as the ghoul, which hates everything, including itself, and goes off to live in this bit of the world here in the northeast, hiding away from everything and everyone else for eternity. The second is a kind of god of order, who later came to be known as the White Wraith because it created its hive mind of wraiths to do its bidding and maintain balance in the world. It lives on a floating island which it drew up from the seabed, a perfect circle which it can essentially teleport and sail around depending on where it needs to be. That circle you see on the map is an island created out of the shadow and emptiness left behind by the wraith pulling up the island. The third spirit is a kind of god of chaos, who doesn't care about any normal rules of magic or physics or anything, and so obviously these last two are pretty skeptical of each other, to say the least. At this point, there is also no language in this world. The first such thing is created by songs that echo through the world, being sung out by the gods of chaos and order, and then also by the Lamantel, the spirits of the second generation of beings. These are still unable to reproduce, still have multiple forms that they can take off and put on at will, but are younger and less powerful than the first 3 spirits, at least to begin with. Nevertheless, they play an important part in naming things, naming each other, creating concepts, and developing a kind of spirit language, which is not terribly abstract to begin with, revolving mostly around creating names for things. Abstract concepts take longer to sing into words and thus don't appear for quite some time. It's okay though, because these spirits can communicate through thoughts and vibes, but it is somewhat convoluted and inconvenient. Really, all this could have been avoided if they'd just been able to learn a language that was already there for them. That's why the spirits of Dycratus would have loved today's sponsor, Mondly. When trying to find a good language learning app, you're often presented with the same old problems. It's always just the same languages, courses are only available in English, and let's be realistic, most of the time the content is just not very useful for real conversations. But there is a solution. With Mondly, you have access to 41 foreign languages from 33 native languages. If your mother tongue is Romanian, you cannot just learn English or French, but also Catalan, Finnish. A chatbot with speech recognition can help you improve your pronunciation while you practice conversations in the language you want to learn. With daily lessons and weekly and monthly quizzes, you can recap what you've learned to make sure you learn your language as quickly and efficiently as possible. So use my link in the description to save 96% of Mondly's lifetime option and start learning the languages you always wanted to learn. Thank you to Mondly for sponsoring this video. Would Would just like to clarify that Mondly is not actually canon in my fantasy world. But you know, it is canon in the real world, so go check it out. Anyway, aside from the first two generations of spirits, there's also a third generation, who are the Trektia, spirits which take on a single determined form, usually a kind of idealized, perfected version of an animal which existed, exists, or will exist. They're like animal spirits from insert basically any folklore here. The dragons, therefore, form part of the fourth generation of beings, the Derateliar. Yes, the dragons, of course, it's a fantasy world. They were created by the god of chaos, who therefore comes to be known as the Elder Dragon, along with 5 spirits of the Lamantel, who were its closest friends and confidants. So the Elder Dragon and its council make their home on the far west island of Barzun, and it's here that they plan and build the first dragon eggs. There are 8 original species of dragon, pictured here from biggest to smallest. Each of these have their cultural differences, separate social structures, and stereotypical characteristics, but share a common language and overarching rules, in the sense that they all ultimately see Barzun as their home, view the Council of Barzun as their elders, and have some common customs and have common moral rules, like never killing or eating another dragon. These species eventually evolve further into others to adapt to whatever environment they find themselves in. Dragons kind of experience Lamarckian evolution, in that their acquired traits get passed on to their offspring, and they can also develop a certain way by simply being in an environment, no natural selection necessary. These therefore become multiple dragon families. The most distinct of the dragon types is the Hendatar. Out of the Council of Barzun, the Elder Dragon's closest friend and favourite protege was Menizario. So much so that after the initial planning of the dragons was complete, the Elder Dragon essentially gave Menizario free rein on designing one of the dragon species. The Hendatar were designed to be especially curious and social, and had Menizario's fierce intelligence, and were also given a little quirk that none of the other dragons had: opposable thumbs, which allowed them to use tools and create art with greater ease than the other races. However, Menizario soon had an argument with the Elder Dragon, because Menizario didn't trust these new creatures to govern themselves and wanted them to be inherently obedient to the Elder Dragon. The Elder Dragon didn't want its children to be like the children of the White Wraith. It wanted to create the very opposite of a hive mind, and if those children were to love it, then the Elder Dragon wanted that love to be born out of familial feelings and trust, rather than an ingrained, predetermined impulse. Menizario didn't exactly fall out with the other spirits, but did leave the project just before its completion, essentially sulking off and spending some time with the spirits on the other side of the world. The original dragons were then hatched on the shores of and in the waters around the Isle of Barzun. I'm gonna finish off here with a story that happens a little while later, as Menizario is off on a See the World arc. It takes place here, in a coral reef between these continents. Here is the story as told by the Kirantesk of Siandar, a group of historians from several eons later, who gender Menizario as he, and so I will too. Swimming deep into the reef, Menizario sees a society of beautiful fish, who emit such power that he knows them to be Trektians, animal spirits. They are initially skeptical of him, saying that they cannot accept any more refugees from other tribes, but become apologetic once he reveals himself to be a powerful spirit of the Lamantel. Menizario becomes interested in the plight of these apparent refugees and learns from the leader of this Trektian tribe, Lorbutar, that their home is under siege from a terrible spirit living deep beneath the coral reef, who has already devoured the homes of many other tribes of the reef and eaten many of the Trektians who lived there. Menizario resolves to go and meet this spirit in the lower levels of the reef, where all colour and life has been sucked out of the rocks and the coral and the water. He shouts to the spirit, "What is your name?" again and again, but is met with no answer but rage. Menizario, realizing that this is an immensely powerful but nameless spirit of the Lamantel, retreats to Lorbutar's home, preparing for another meeting. This time he brings with him a rock in the formation of a ring, and swims yet closer to the being, taunting it about its namelessness until he is caught in one of its tentacles and lowered towards its great mouth. The nameless spirit laughs at its victory, but is silenced when Menizario says that he could give the spirit a name if it were to let him go. This tempts the spirit, but it at last says, "I would rather consume thy forms than take a name from thee. Thou hast insulted me, and I shall not stand for it. Besides, I eat and consume, for it is that which I do. I need not have a name." Then Menizario offers a wager. "If you eat my forms, then I can escape formless through the water. If you win this wager, I will let you consume not only my forms, but my spirit as well. And if I win, I shall still gift you a name. You cannot lose, Great One." The nameless spirit cannot pass up the chance to eat the essence of another Lamantel and accepts. Menizario wagers that there is something in the ocean that the Nameless One cannot eat. Knowing itself to be able to consume anything that it had ever come across, the spirit laughs at these terms and accepts instantly. Menizario then brings out his ring-shaped rock and points to its center. I wager you cannot eat this whole. For although the whole is a physical thing, it cannot be consumed, for it is but an absence of matter. The spirit is at first angered by this trickery, but all Lamantel are bound to their word by the strictest laws of nature, and thus it releases Menizario. It calms itself, knowing that it is about to receive a name, a worthy prize in and of itself. The spirit orders Menizario to uphold his side of the bargain and name it. Menizario grows in size and puts on his most powerful and majestic forms as lightning crashes and the water around him bubbles. He weaves the most powerful name he has ever woven, Akrinoggu ub Altomarish, containing meanings from the dragon language and meanings of Menizario's own making. That name means prisoner, forever hungry, monster of the deep, but it is most commonly translated as the one who is chained to the seabed. And thus, forever, despite its curses and protestations, the being is unable to move, and Menizario returns to Lord Batar's tribe, a hero. They give him the title Lord Menizario, and as this name spreads across the eastern world, Menizario's power grows. As you might see from kind of the contrast between this video and what was said in the main guide video, this is kind of a time of myth and legend, and I want to have that vibe, right? I don't want things to make full sense when we look back at this kind of time. I like it being more weird, more mysterious, and that things become more technical and political and kind of precise when humans come around. They are like the 12th generation of beings, so, they are the youngest beings in Dycratus. I like the idea that kind of the human will to make sense of the world kind of makes the world of Dycratus make more sense. This kind of time of myth and legend described here has a different vibe to it. Yeah, I don't usually do the whole talking at the end of the video for the credits or whatever, but I decided to extend these ones a little bit and just say thank you for the 100,000 subscribers, which is was a bit of a while ago now, but still pretty cool, and I never said thank you to everyone for that, for sticking with me through, I don't know, saying controversial things about French spelling. I am an independent YouTuber, I guess. I don't have like I write and edit everything myself. It's really just me and my artist who do anything, and occasionally I get some additional writing from my girlfriend. So I mean in that sense, it's kind of a very, very few people who are part of the endeavor, but that doesn't mean that there's not a bunch of other people who have been necessary in bringing the channel to where it is. So I thought I'd do this extended credits just to sort of show you who's done things all along behind the scenes.